Yo, Hideyuki here. The Rebellion grows, the one chain to oblivion, returning yet again with another excellent video. It's been a good little while since I've done anything on comics, and it got me thinking, wow, there are a lot of good new and old comics that, I don't see that many people talking about. So why not talk about them? So today we're going to go over the top 10 must read comics. This is new and old. So without further ado, let's get straight into this. First up on the list, we have Ghost Pepper. This series just came out last year. This is under, the Image imprint, and man, it's very much a passion project, right? You have this society that's ruled by a false leader. But this guy that has no sense of real control. He's constantly paranoid. He fucked up big time, and Ash is out to get his revenge, right? He's the true savior. He's the true hero, but he was outcasted. He was outcasted, and he meets this girl that does this extremely spicy cooking, right? Using the ghost pepper ingredients and what have you. So she has this food truck and travels around different cities and what have you, and just sharing that food. So the two of them cross paths, and now it's just this story of revenge and adventure. Incredible artwork here, lots of great dialogue, and just a fun time, man. Definitely a sleeper comic that you just can't miss. Next up on the list, we have Immortal Legend Batman. Man, oh man, awesome comic right here. This is for my Toku fans out there that want something from Batman that's Toku adjacent, right? This spin on Batman is amazing, man. Wow, the suits designs here are just absolutely incredible. The attention to detail is quite good. You know, Dan Mora with some amazing art as he always does. He always delivers on that. Great paneling, great work here, and still staying true to what Batman's known for, right? You have this whole society of the Bat family, right, with Nightwing and Robin and Batman, and they have to maintain that legend, that mantle, right? And throughout this entire series, he's just fighting shadows of himself, shadows of his sins, shadows of his past, and yeah, it just works together as a Batman story and as a Toku adjacent story that's heavily Kamen Rider inspired. Great stuff here. Next up on the list, we have Outsiders, the 2003 run. Now, this is a really interesting one because Outsiders, as we all know, have tons of different variations over the years, but I feel like this is the one that gets overlooked the most. I don't really see that many people talking about the 2003 run, and maybe it's because it got canceled after issue 50 and it kind of got left in the dust. But coming back in retrospect and going back and reading those issues, I'm like, man, it just holds up really well. This takes off, after a extreme event with the Titans comics, right? And you have these loss of team members, right? They're dead, they're gone. That's it for them, right? So you have all these other characters like Nightwing and what have you just having to deal with that, but try to find a way to move on and make amends, right? And just still operate as a superhero group, but with a different focus, focusing as a more covert action team, something you'll typically see from Image superheroes. But either way, man, still great stuff here, great art, writing's tight, solid. But yeah, definitely a overlooked comic here. Next up on the list, we have Psycho Circus. Woo! Named after the Kiss album of the same name. It's a tie-in comic to go with that album. But quite amazing. This is another Image print that people definitely skimmed over, man. I mean, the artwork in here is insane. The paneling is just absolutely incredible, man. And it's cool to see Kiss revered as kind of like these legends slash gods in this comic. Very interesting interpretation of them. And just seeing the carnival, encounter them and having to summon them right when they're needed. And yeah, it's just an awesome comic all around. If you're looking for something with some really cool art from Image, because Image is always delivering on some awesome art. They always do some weird paneling that really stands out, man. Just really fresh out the page. Then this series got you covered. Next up on the list, we have Poison Ivy, the new solo series, the 2022 run. Now, this is going to be an interesting one because critics seem to like this series, and most people, from what I've seen, also like it. There might be a few here and there that are crying woke, and saying, "Oh man, the comic's not good because it's woke, man. Oh, a strong female character. Oh, we can't have that." But don't pay attention to those losers. They don't know what they're talking about. Poison Ivy definitely deserves the respect. It definitely deserves the praise. It's taking a character that didn't really have that much to her originally and just doing more, just doing the absolute most. You have this character that, lost her powers. Her powers aren't as strong. She's trying to regain them, right? She's trying to, solve the world's problems, especially the environmental problems in her own way. She's trying to pretty much wipe out humanity, but she starts to realize that, yes, I want to save this ecosystem. I want to save this environment. Our planet is fucking dying. These people are destroying it, but they're not all as bad as it seems. There are some good people out there, and there might be another way. And, this is probably the best Poison Ivy comic that we've gotten to date. This really delves into her character. And yeah, just absolutely incredible. Next up on list, we have the Ghost Rider 1990 run. Now, technically, this is a pretty iconic run of Ghost Rider, right? So it's nothing underrated. But either way, I still see it as a must read at the very least, for the Ghost Rider fans out there. This is probably one of the best and most iconic runs, as all of y'all already know, and for good reason. We have a brand new Ghost Rider in this story, right? But we also still have Johnny Blaze, and he's just tag teaming with this new rider, right? He's just trying to keep his family safe, keep the circus going, just try to live his life. But he's tied down yet again, to the spirit of vengeance. He has to teach this new rider, this new Ghost Rider, the ropes. So they just go on a complete journey together. So very, very cool stuff here. Awesome artwork, man. I look back at this art, I'm like, damn, this came out in 1990, and it's just so fresh, man. Just looking at the art style here, very, very well done. Great stuff. Next up on the list, we have Sword of Azrael, the 2022 miniseries. So this is technically a anniversary comic, and it's both a sequel and kind of a remake. It's kind of strange. So it's paying homage to the original miniseries that Azrael debuted in, but it also is technically a canon sequel to his appearance in Justice League Odyssey because it takes place right after Justice League Odyssey. So we're just getting a little more of Azrael in this miniseries. And this is probably the most in-depth uh of Azrael we've seen since Agent of the Bat. Agent of the Bat really delved into the character a lot. And this series kind of picks that up. They try to separate Jean Paul Valley from Azrael. Azrael is very much a persona, right? But it's solidified. It's the system is constantly in his head, and he has to fight that. He has to make peace with that system before someone else falls victim to that. So it's a really good redemption story arc. And Azrael is known for having, redemption story arcs. I mean, that's what the character is all about. So very, very well done. Necklace's artwork is amazing here, man. He has a very cool anime inspired art style, and yeah, just very, very fresh. Great stuff here, man. Great stuff. Next up on the list, we have DC versus Vampires. Man, oh man, this is an awesome comic. Just pure greatness. If you're looking for some extra stuff, you want to see a cool crossover mixed with some horror, DC versus Vampires has you covered. Just awesome artwork, variant covers looking great, absolutely horrifying. And man, they just get to work here. The characters here, man. I mean, especially with Green Lantern and Nightwing just completely, betraying everyone and just, going in. They have their own little revenge going on, and they're taking it out on the world, and they're just causing this vampiric virus to spread around. So, the world is completely flipped on its head. And this also pulls from some zombie movies and comics as well, obviously. And yeah, it's just a great series altogether. Now, there's going to be a follow up to this coming out soon, so I will be on that when that comes out. We're going to get a collected edition of that. So, yeah, greatness. Next up on the list, we have Dark Knights of Steel. Now, this is another crossover story. This is an Elseworld print, um, but a very good one, man. It actually surprised me how good this series was. I'm very much a sucker for limited series because a lot of the time it's a lot more tightly written. You don't got to go chasing after this series and the next series just to keep up with the storyline. You don't have to wait a million years for the collected edition or an omnibus. You just get your limited issues and that's it. And that's what Dark Knights of Steel did. That's exactly what it did. You put the Justice League in this medieval setting, right? And you just have some little twists and turns. You have Batman and Superman as brothers in this, which I thought was very interesting. Just doing some different tweaks and stuff that Elseworld is known for, just like Immortal Legend Batman and many others like it. Now, I wouldn't read All's Winter. All's Winter isn't all that great. The art style is cool and all, but it's a gimmick at the end of the day. And compared to the original, it's just nowhere even close. Trying way too hard to be like God of War, and yeah, it just fails in every way. But Dark Knights of Steel, on the other hand, just really solid all around. Great crossover. And last but not least, we have Hack Slash. Now, this is a comic I've talked about years ago, man. Man, it's been so long since I even mentioned this series. But again, if you really like slasher movies, horror movies, anything that has to do with the final girl tropes, this has got you covered, man. This is a horror comic made by horror fans, and you could see the love put into it. Very cool. Lots of awesome stories here. Now, the one thing about this though is it is pretty lengthy, and the reading order is all over the fucking place. The best way to experience this, I would say, is through the anthologies or the omnibus. That's the best way to experience this series. A lot of the anthology stories hold up pretty well, and yeah, they're just a lot of fun. But with that being said, those are my top 10 must read comics, man, both new and old. And yeah, man, I mean, just a lot of incredible comics uh, that definitely should be checked out. If you've read any of these, let me know. Turn the fuck up in the comments. And with that being said, Hideyuki here. And until next time, I'll see you.